Good morning, I'm Anne-Marie.
And I'm Dorianne, and we will be presenting a study entitled Ensuring Meaningful Access to Easy-to-Read Information, a case study. So a brief introduction first, providing easy-to-read information for people with intellectual disability can safeguard their right to access to information. However, on its own, its usefulness is very limited. Here we are presenting a case study of one organization that provides day services for persons with intellectual disability in Malta. The main research questions of the study are: what factors influence the easy-to-read documents in service provision for people with intellectual disability? And the other research question is: what factors need to be considered to ensure the meaningful use of these documents? The aims of the study are to contribute to a greater understanding of the contexts in which easy-to-read information is being used and of those factors that affect its usefulness.
So we're going to present some brief background from the literature. While the importance for people with intellectual disability to have access to information is acknowledged in the research literature, its impact and usefulness is also questioned. These are the main points from the literature. The need for easy-to-read information in meeting personalized health information needs for people with intellectual disability is acknowledged. But there are concerns about whether its symbolic value is greater than its usefulness. Easy-to-read documents for persons with intellectual disability on their own are not enough. There also needs to be screening for the support needs of individuals with intellectual disability to establish the adaptations needed for the service users. Furthermore, the value of involving people with intellectual disability in the process is also highlighted in the literature. The rate of progress in producing easy to read information has not been paralleled by progress in delivering it to its target audience. Access to easy to read information must be facilitated so that the people for whom it is intended can understand it. It is also important to attend to each person's support needs in understanding easy to read information and to check for understanding. Some authors also refer to alternative ways of producing and presenting easy to read information. Audrey Van de Weyt referred to videos, computer aided information, and easy to read websites. The usefulness of video is also highlighted by Goodwin et al. Therefore, the literature in the area of easy to read information indicates that its usefulness emerges when it is individually tailored according to the needs and aptitudes of each person with intellectual disability, and when it is used as a process of supporting understanding and comprehension needs and not just as a resource, as Mender wrote in 2015.
So now we move on to the methodology. So for this research, the case chosen was a day center run by Promotability, where easy-to-read forms are used to enable service users with intellectual disability to decide whether to participate in activities that take place outside the routine program, for example, day outings and evening activities. A specific template is followed for these forms, which have photos in the left-hand column and the corresponding text on the right side. The style is informal, using a sans serif font. At the end of the document, there is a yes or no option for service users to mark their preference. Following ethical approval, we conducted a focus group with 5 support workers at the day center who make use of these easy-to-read forms, an observation session with 8 service users who had used these forms before, and a semi-structured interview with a manager within Promotability, who was involved in introducing the easy-to-read forms. The service users involved had different levels of verbal communication. with 3 being able to converse quite easily and the other 2 responding with one-word answers. A thematic analysis of the research data was then carried out using the 6 steps identified by Clark and Brown, 2013. We also used Bronfenbrenner's 1979 ecosystem theory as part of our methodology. Now, the following slide shows the Bronfenbrenner's ecosystem theory adapted to our study. So the innermost circle represents the microsystem, which involves the interpersonal relationships between service users and staff. The other circle is the mesosystem, which refers to the interrelations between service users, staff, and parents. The exosystem, which refers to decisions and action taken by management, and the macro system, the outermost circle, which revolves around the Maltese socio-cultural and policy context. We now present the research results according to the themes elicited during the thematic analysis. Where relevant, we note the applicability of these results to healthcare settings. Afterwards, we discuss these results within the framework of the social model of disability and our adaptation of Bronfenbrenner's ecosystem.
So the first theme that we identified was choices made within structures determined by others. Albert, the manager, explained that Promotability's management's decision to implement the easy-to-read forms in day services was prompted by the introduction of standards for residential services for disabled persons, which require service users to get involved in decisions concerning them. The aim was to inform service users about specific activities and to get them accustomed to accessible information. These easy-to-read forms are currently only used for non-routine activities. Jane, one of the support workers, explained that during the day, different modes are used to offer choices, but mainly flashcards and verbal explanations. Service users thus express choices within structures determined by promotability staff. Another theme that we identified was the importance of individualization. During the focus group, support workers acknowledged that using the same easy-to-read template for each activity fails to cater for the service user's impairment-related needs. Therefore, each form is explained to every service user individually. Jane stated that first we disseminated the easy-to-read form, and then we go through the forms with each client one at a time. This method was observed during the session with the service users. Each explanation differed from the next. There were some service users who could understand the pictures, and the support workers went through the form to ensure understanding. For example, this exchange happened when Jennifer was working with Mary regarding an activity that was being held in hot weather. Jennifer asked Mary, "What do you need to bring with you for the activity?" And Mary replied, "Cap, water, and money." Therefore, showing understanding of what you need to have if you're going to go out in hot weather. However, other service users had difficulties understanding the easy-to-read form, so the support workers provided a full explanation of the activity whilst pointing to the different pictures. Staff were also aware of the need to take a step back and avoid influencing or overriding service users' choices. For example, Jennifer asked Mary, "Would you want to go to the outing, yes or no?" The support workers first described the overall layout of the form, whilst pointing towards each picture to explain what the activity entails. This is from Joyce's explanation. Here there are the pictures of where we are going, and on the other side there are the words. Service users were asked questions that gauge their level of understanding in order to avoid unnecessary explanations. Jennifer, for example, asked, "If you see this," pointing to a calendar picture, "do you understand this?" Despite these efforts, not all service users could understand the forms and the support workers' explanation. Martha, for example, kept insisting that she wanted to go to the activity, even though she was told repeatedly that this was a practice session. The third theme that we identified was the role of support workers. The observation session highlighted the asymmetrical relationship between the support workers and service users. The support workers moved on to the next picture, even when the service users did not fully understand the previous one. This may also be noted in hospital settings, where the pace is too fast for healthcare professionals to ensure that their patients with intellectual disability have fully understood what was said. The support workers highlighted some shortcomings of the easy to read forms, such as the small font size and black and white picture. Furthermore, they questioned the value of using easy to read forms with service users who are able to comprehend instructions and verbally communicate their wishes. During the focus group, John said, if the clients can understand and can communicate verbally, there is no need for the easy to read because you can sit next to them and chat. Another theme that emerged was powerlessness of staff and service users. The right to access information was recognized by the support workers. John stated that it's a fundamental right of every human being. Although promotability introduced easy to read information to empower personal decisions among service users, both support workers and the manager strongly emphasized that the service user's answer is not a final one. John said the choice is being offered, but the choice is not 100% yours. At times, parents overrule their son or daughter's wish, either due to disagreement with their choice or due to practical limitations. Such overturning of decisions, already taken, reinforces feelings of powerlessness amongst both service users and staff. Albert, the manager, said whatever we do, parents take the final decision. Staff said that parents do not always understand the purpose of the easy to read form. John quoted a particular parent as saying, I take the decision and sign for my son, not him. Unfortunately, this attitude is at times reinforced in the healthcare system, as health professionals tend to ignore the person with intellectual disability and only explain the procedure that is going to take place to the parents. Hospital consent forms are already typically signed by parents. The support workers claimed that this is especially true of elderly parents who are used to acting as their child's advocate and deciding on their behalf. Next theme, provision of information and its use. When parents alter the service user's decision, the easy to read form is reduced to a source of information rather than a tool which facilitates choice. Similarly, the benefit of the form is diminished when it omits details, such as if an activity is being held in a very noisy environment. Consequently, the information may be deceiving. Joyce said that it only pictures the positive aspect of the activity. As John explained, I feel that if we are going to inform the clients, we have to prepare them to the full and not saying only the positive side and then they find a different reality. This may also be relevant to hospital settings, as easy to read information may exclude details such as level of pain and limitations of movement after specific interventions. The support workers also questioned how much certain service users grasp the concept of time and place. Next theme is on practical issues and alternatives to easy to read forms. Support workers noted that the easy to read forms that they take time to produce. During the focus group, John said, the forms can be used for all activities we do at the day center, but their production requires a lot of time. This is another drawback of clinical settings, as it is time-consuming to convert all existing forms and information booklets to easy-to-read formats. Other issues arise from parents' struggle with logistical matters, such as transport, cost, and timing. Staff are aware that parents may overrule their adult child's decisions because promotability cannot accommodate for the needs of all families. As Jessica pointed out, some opt out of the activity because of financial problems. Another issue revolved around non-verbal service users, as they remain unable to communicate their decision through the system used and depend on the choices of the parents. Augmentative and alternative communication was not mentioned. Staff members in this study believe that other alternatives, such as videos or pictures, may be more effective. Jessica said a video can facilitate understanding. It was suggested that easy-to-read forms could be presented on a screen because this method provides flexibility in changing the details provided, the font and picture size, and is also eco-friendly. And the final theme is service users' lack of agency. The service users' lack of agency in their daily lives was also raised both by Albert and the support workers. While the activities at the day centre aim to empower service users through informed choices and independence, at home they tend to be more passive. Albert explained that when you place the responsibility on the person, the skills flourish. But when you remove such responsibility, they become independent on their surroundings. The support workers remarked that such attitudes are caused by various factors, including lack of time on the part of family members or their fear of the service user sustaining an injury. Support workers and parents must therefore promote service users' participation in day-to-day decisions. Albert stated that this idea still needs to become ingrained in our mentality as an agency and also in the persons involved with the service users. These findings show that Promotability's introduction of the easy-to-read format resulted in limited success in enhancing the contribution of persons with intellectual disability in decision-making. Other factors need to be taken into consideration. So we now present the results with a discussion through the ecosystem within which the forms are used.
Here we use Bronfenbrenner's ecosystem theory to shed light on how the various factors impinge on the effectiveness of the easy-to-read forms and how they intertwine with one another. This approach focuses on the barriers that exist in the environment in which the service users are situated. We analyze the results of our small-scale study within the context of the overall decision-making processes and the wider environment. So, the first one is the microsystem, which involves the interpersonal relationships between service users and staff. From the observation session, it was clear that the staff and service users enjoy very warm relationships with one another. However, interactions were typically initiated by the staff, and service users mainly responded to questions posed to them. This situation reflects the power imbalance inherent in most relationships between people with intellectual disability and others. Even when staff were actively seeking to give service users more control, opportunities for them to voice their opinion was still restricted. Within the microsystem, the staff are very much in charge of interaction. The reasons for this situation need to be sought beyond the microsystem itself. Now we move to the mesosystem, which involves the interrelations between service users, staff, and also the parents. Parents are an important reference point in the lives of service users. The fact that they feature in the system without being directly involved in the activities held at the day center or in this research highlights the important role they play in the lives of people with intellectual disability. Within the mesosystem, there are the interrelations between staff and parents, and between service users and parents to consider. Ultimately, it is the parents who decide what activities their adult children with intellectual disability are involved in. The motivations for the parents' own decisions are also affected by various factors, including practical arrangements. Now, move on to the exosystem, which involves decisions and actions taken by the management. One aspect of the exosystem, which is directly related to the use of the easy-to-read forms, is the management of promotability. It was at this level that change was brought about through the introduction of these forms. The potential of the easy-to-read forms to promote choice for service users is limited by the structures of the larger system in which the forms are being used. What activities are carried out and what happens during the day is mostly decided by management. These decisions are in turn influenced by other decisions taken at a higher level and by what happens in the macro system. Now we move on to the macro system, which relates to the Maltese socio-cultural and policy context. The support workers refer to the reluctance of elderly parents to allow their adult children with intellectual disability to decide for themselves. Thus, they are indirectly referring to socio-cultural and policy changes that have occurred in Malta over the past decades. Elderly parents were born at a time when disabled people were mainly seen as a burden. Until the mid-1960s, disabled people were mostly kept hidden by family members. However, a Catholic priest, Monsignor Michele Zoppardi, changed attitudes towards disabled people and worked actively to improve their quality of life. He overturned the discourse on disabled people by speaking of them as angels. As Camilleri and Callus, 2001, argue, this terminology gave rise to new stereotypes of untouchability, which over the years have themselves become powerful instruments of oppression. Many adults with intellectual disability were raised in this context. The situation today has improved through the achievement of the disability rights movement, anti-discrimination legislation, and services that promote inclusion in mainstream education, in employment, and in community-based living. However, many areas of concern remain regarding policy and services, as attested by the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disability, 2018, on Malta's implementation of the Convention. Some sociocultural factors still impinge negatively on disabled people's lives. While discourse about angels is not as prevalent, it is still used. Furthermore, disabled people, especially those who have intellectual disability, tend to be overprotected. So, to summarize, this analysis shows that the interaction between support workers and service users when using the easy-to-read forms is directly influenced by factors which may not be immediately obvious. Attending to these factors is vital if easy-to-read material is to serve its function. It is equally important to consider how the factors interact with one another. In the ecosystem, the innermost level is the one influenced by the most external factors. The location of the person with intellectual disability in this inner level highlights how their lives are controlled. Without addressing these needs, the situation, the effectiveness of easy-to-read information remains limited. Even worse, its use can be counterproductive because overturning service users' decisions may reinforce feelings of powerlessness. Now, as a conclusion, using easy-to-read documents is not an automatic guarantee that people with intellectual disability have access to information that affects their lives. The fact that the effect of systemic barriers in the lives of people with intellectual disability emerged in a study with limited scope underscores just how significant it is. This scenario is often also played out in clinical settings, in the interaction between healthcare professionals, persons with intellectual disability, and their parents. Similar barriers may be encountered, which limit the full opportunity for the person with intellectual disability to understand what is being said and their ability to give consent about their health issues. The study therefore highlights the importance of attending to the wider context in which easy-to-read documents are used. It throws light on the way in which it is not only persons with intellectual disability who experience constraints in their lives, but also those who live and work with them, who also act within limitations. If the factors that create these constraints are not attended to, easy-to-read information on its own cannot fulfill its potential for empowerment.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation. We hope that you have found it interesting. These are just some select references from the paper that we published on the topic. Thank you and bye.
Bye.